In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the last bit of the why global migration has become more complex in the 21st century. This is for the OCR A-Level Geography spec, and the points I'm looking at today are going to be about changes in migration policies and development of distinct corridors of bilateral migration. So I'm going to start with the last category about bilateral migration, which essentially means the flow of migrants between two countries. And in the 21st century, we've seen that there has been some corridors that have been well established and still dominate major flows. So the flow from Mexico to USA is one that's been around for a long time, since the 20th century. And that is still very dominant in terms of a major bilateral corridor. However, we've seen changes in the political and economic climate of the world, and therefore we're seeing new ones appear that I haven't really seen before. So Syria and Turkey and South Sudan to Uganda are places where there's been conflict, and therefore there's been bilateral movement in those areas. Similarly, we are seeing areas which have gradually over time become more and more important as bilateral corridors, and we see that is happening in places such as India, where people are going to the Gulf states, or India to USA, and also China to the USA. So this shows that there has been some well-established ones, but also new and growing significant bilateral flows happening in the 21st century. In terms of the factors that have caused these bilateral corridors to grow in terms of importance, but also why some have appeared recently rather than others, there's lots of different factors. So employment opportunities and wage differences are often a reason why we get a corridor open. The reason why Indian migrants might move to the USA is because there are better wages in the USA. We can also see that there is often a political barrier sometimes. So if there are no political barriers, if you don't have to have a visa, or there's a pro-immigration policy in a country, that will obviously mean that corridors can open up. It also means that corridors can start to kind of become smaller over time if things change in terms of political access. We can also say that the proximity of a country will affect if a corridor opens. So Turkey has a bilateral corridor with Syria, and that is because it is right next to it. The same with South Sudan and Uganda, the same with Mexico and the USA. That means it costs much less to go to those countries, and therefore people are more likely to migrate, opening up the chance of a bigger corridor. Also, we see language similarities. So in some countries where there is very similarities in language, so people moving from India to places in the Gulf state, there is a similarity in language at times, and therefore it's easier for people to actually move. If there's also established diasporas, so in the example of India and the Gulf states, quite a lot of Indian migrants have already moved to the Gulf states. That means there is established communities there. It means that more likely more Indian migrants are going to move there because they know people who are like them, who are established in that country. The last one is obviously conflict. Conflict is one of the factors that seems slightly different to the rest of them, in the fact that it can just open up a corridor over a very short space of time. Syria and Turkey being that, the conflict caused people to have to leave their own homes, their own country, and therefore they merely moved to the nearest safe area. So places like Turkey and Lebanon, the bordering countries, were most likely to experience those bilateral corridors of people. I'm now going to talk about national migration policies. These are set up, and there can be changes in them, and they're often created to meet the needs of the country. So a pro-immigration country might be doing that to fill a labour shortage in its economy. However, these aren't static policies. They change over time as the needs of the country change. And we can see that in some good historic examples. Australia, in this poster, is an example of a government poster that was showing pro-immigration. It was encouraging people to come to Australia to go for jobs. It's saying build your children's future. It's encouraging young migrants to come and establish families here at the turn of the 20th century. However, if I look at a more recent government poster, this was from 2014, this is a poster that is very anti-immigration. It's also in response to illegal immigration, but also refugees coming into Australia, and the government trying to discourage people from doing that. Australia is not the only example of a change. Again, at the turn of the 20th century, America would have been a land of opportunity that would have encouraged, and in its government, people from Italy and Europe and Germany to come to America to help build up its economy. But now, obviously, we see that policy is rapidly changed over time. And in the Trump era, it was very much anti-immigration. It was trying to stop illegal immigration, but also trying to stop immigration from countries, often Arab states. This isn't completely changed to a very anti-immigration policy. Recent political changes mean that those are being reversed, and therefore the immigration policies of America could continue to change in the future to being slightly more pro-immigration. I'm now going to give two examples of countries that have made a change in their migration policy and the effects it's had. So Pakistan is a low-income country, and it has a very pro-immigration policy. It's encouraging its citizens to move to other countries. And the main reason they're encouraging people to do that is the idea that those people will send back remittances. So in the last couple of years, the average amount that's being sent back per year is about 20 billion. To a low-income country like Pakistan, that's a significant amount of money, and it's actually the largest amount of remittances that's being sent back to a country. So that can have a really significant impact on the country. It's being encouraged by Pakistan because they've got a very youthful population. That means people can go away and work. They can go away and work in low-skilled jobs or in construction, and then make money and send their remittances back to their family. But if it happens on a big enough scale, that can actually not just lead to a localized multiplier effect, but actually develop the entire economy of Pakistan. And when you have nearly 8 million people doing it, which they do have at the moment, and most of those people working in the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, that is a significant amount of money coming in, and that can make a significant amount of change to the overall development of Pakistan if it happens over a long period of time. So the Pakistani government are encouraging this, and they are working with the International Labour Organization to come up with a plan to do this. And the one they've produced is called the National Immigration Policy of Pakistan. And what they've done as part of that is to set up actual organisations within the government that are directly responsible for dealing with the immigration. So the Bureau of Immigration and Overseas Employment, the Overseas Pakistani Foundation, their job is to monitor the immigration process, but also to promote Pakistani labour abroad, but equally to make sure that immigration process goes as safely as possible, so that people are protected, that they don't get trafficked, and that they are fully aware of what they're going into. And I'm going to go through some examples of that in a second to see how they actually try and do that. The whole point of this is to meet the needs of the Pakistani government, so make sure that they get their remittances and that can develop as an economy, but also while meeting the kind of rules of the International Labour Organization and wider supranational institutions like the UN. So one of the ways that they try to support Pakistanis who are emigrating is by giving them stuff to the families that they have left behind. So one of the examples is the Overseas Pakistani Foundation actually set up 24 schools in Pakistan that are open to the children of those people that have migrated away. This is a real benefit for the people that have migrated away, because what it enables them to do is they can go away and make money and not worry about their children's long-term future. They know that they have got a good school place and that they are being educated, and it means that there is less of a barrier for them to move. They can go away, come back in a couple of years, and they know in that time that their children will have been educated and be even pushing on their own skill base to maybe potentially become a migrant in the future. They also have websites, and this is an example of a website by the Bureau of Immigration, and they've provided a list of licensed companies, often companies in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, that have been monitored and been checked and vetted, and these have lots of available jobs on it, and it means that people can get a job or apply for a job before that they go. They know it's secure, they know these companies are legitimate, and that means it stops trafficking. So it benefits the migrants, but also it helps benefit the Pakistani government because they don't have to deal with trafficking issues later down the line. In a similar kind of way, resources like the Migrant Resource Centre, which is a training centre, they give advice to potential migrants. So you can check how to safely move from Pakistan to one of the Gulf states. You can get legal advice on what your rights are. You can be told about scams to avoid. You can even be maybe set up with potential contacts for employment opportunities or housing. So all of these are to, again, improve that safety, make sure that immigration happens and there are no barriers to doing it that might stop people from doing it. And it means it's safer and that money keeps flowing back into the Pakistani economy. I'm now going to talk about a different country. I'm going to talk about Canada. And Canada is not pro-immigration, it's actually pro-immigration. So this is it's increased in its importance since 2015. And the reason why they've become pro-immigration is because they're trying to fill labour gaps in their economy to help it grow. And they're not looking for low-skilled labour. They are looking to recruit skilled workers. So IT specialists, engineers, healthcare workers would be some of the priority groups that they would be trying to encourage to come to the country of Canada. And the way that they do this is they anybody that applies to come to Canada, they rank them in a point system, and I'm going to go for that point system in a second. The one thing to mention before I slightly move on is Canada, even though it's slightly ramped up its immigration policies recently, it's been often a very pro-immigration country. So it often has encouraged people to come there and help set up its economy over the last kind of 60, 70, 80 years, which has created a very multicultural society. So this isn't just a recent change, it's been a kind of part of a longer kind of ethos that the country's had. So in terms of the point system, the maximum points you can get is 1,200, and that would make you an ideal candidate for the Canadian government. So the way that you would get points, you can get points for different categories, how old you are, your education, language skills. So it's going to give priority to those people that are younger, that have a good education. So graduates would get more points than someone who just had formal high school education. If you've already got work experience, so if you're going to have 5 years of work experience, you're going to get more points than if you've got none. But also language skills, kind of English and French. So all of those on that left-hand side add to your overall point score. But as you can see, there's this big chunk that is the more important chunk. And so 50% of all your points can be awarded if you've already got a job. So if you get recruited by a Canadian company, you're more likely to be able to get into Canada a lot quicker. So again, this is kind of an incentive of the Canadian government to be able to get companies to handpick who they want. Therefore, they don't just get lots of migrants turning up that maybe don't fill their needs, but actually getting the people that they want to fill the gaps in their economy. They've also even given priority to those people that would go to the more provincial areas. These are obviously the areas of the economy that probably need the most growth. Most migrants would end up going to the big metropolis areas like Montreal or Edmonton or Toronto. So what it's trying to do is it's going to give more preference to you if you want to go to live out in the sticks in northern Canada, because those are the places that they want to grow, and those are the places that probably have the biggest labour gaps of all. So we can see that the migration policy will affect the flows of migration, and we can have very pro-immigration, which is encouraging people to leave and make money for the country and send it back. But also we have some countries that are encouraging people to come in, and they're doing that to try and meet the needs of their country to help their economy grow.